Hey, good morning. Uh, David here, Sunday morning, beautiful day. And it comes up again this morning to talk about addiction, alcoholism, recovery in the family. So um, my estimation is that for every alcoholic or addict in the world, that there's at least, for everyone, there's 10 family members that are affected. That's kind of on an average, I would think. And maybe that could be very conservative, could be way more. But let's say that for every alcoholic and addict, you know, in the world, that there's 10, you know, so if there's, you know, 100 million people on the planet that suffer from addiction, substance addiction, like we're just talking about mostly, and you know, drug addiction, substance addiction, then what would the numbers be? Um, I mean, actually, we can expand that a bit from substance addiction to gambling, which is part of the addiction cycle, sex addiction, food. I mean, so it's unbelievable the numbers of people who suffer, who are in addiction. And there's lots of conversation about addiction. There's tons of information about addiction and recovery, but there's not a lot of focus on the family. Think of, if there, how many hundreds of millions of people on the planet who are affected by addiction in their family. You know, your brother or sister is killing themselves with addiction, or is gambling themselves into the street, literally. People go with their last dollar to the casino. I mean, it's just so, or um, are eating themselves to death, the food addiction, and the family is like, generally, in a situation of, what the heck is going on? How do I deal with this? So uh, Even more than that, let's say that the family often blames itself. The family says, "Where did I go wrong? What did I do? How did I cause this?" Right? And you know, we didn't cause it. We aren't. I mean, the bottom line is we didn't cause it, and even though we sometimes think we did, we didn't. And it's almost actually, um, even to think that we caused it is is part of the disease, because the the core of the disease, according to the 12-step recovery program, is that the alcoholic is selfish and self-centered, and to the extreme. And it's not easy to see what does that look like. It's like, hi Cami, good morning. um, what does that mean? And so the alcoholic, I don't, we can go deep into how did this happen. And it doesn't really matter. I remember when I discovered that I was an addict and an alcoholic. When I really woke up to that, I was like, well, how did that happen? Was it in my genetics? Was it environmental? Could I blame my dad? you know, and people in recovery, at the time, said it doesn't matter. We're not focusing on how we got the disease or how we were living in the disease. We're focusing on recovery. And so I let go of that. I just, like, okay, this is the fact. I am an alcoholic. I am an addict. And that was boom. But with the family often has, you know, first of all, maybe no support. They're kind of left out of the conversation, you know, because universally we see the addict and the alcoholic as the one who needs help. And so often the family's left out. It's kind of an afterthought in some cases. Although there's a lot of recovery possibilities for the family, it's often a family thinks that they're not sick. They think that the problem is the alcoholic and the addict. And and uh, but it's clear, at least in the 12-step world, that alcoholism and addiction is a family disease, and everybody's affected. You know, um, let's imagine that you're in a family, and there's two or three siblings. There's grandparents on both sides. There's a mom and a dad, and a young teen or somebody in their early 20s dies of an overdose. Wow, that's a final thing. There's no addict left to help, but we've got family grieving and blaming themselves, and I could have done this and I could have done that. That's the disease, you know. So I want to shine light there, you know. When we think of the numbers, say with the opiate crisis, and in a lot of cases, even, you know, many of the people who've died of fentanyl overdoses and those kind of things in the last few years, many of them haven't been addicts. Many of them have been casual drug users and weekend drug users, and they've overdosed, you know. And so the family is like, holy shit, what happened? And goes into a spiral. And I just want to shine the light there. I want to I mean, let's talk about that. If this has happened to you or in your family, I want to talk to you. You know, I'd like when you're able to talk to you publicly so that we can share you know, um, we can actually share a bit of our grief and our pain, and 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 help others through theirs, you know. And and uh, and of course, when, you know, that's an extreme case when people die. Some of the times they are full on addicts, and they've overdosed, and sometimes they're not. They've overdosed, but then there's the family who has the son or daughter who's living with the disease, who's been in and out of treatment 6 times, you know. And we're like, what the hell do we do? Often we're angry, you know. The family's angry, we're angry. I remember when one of my kids was deep in addiction, and, you know, I was fantasizing about killing drug dealers. Hell, I used to be one, you know. But there I was fantasizing about killing drug dealers, and that's not sane thinking, you know. But I was there, you know. And I was angry at the system, and and I didn't know what to do. You know, she needed a really fast stop. Uh, you know, so I took her to a treatment center. I borrowed money and took her to a treatment center. And at the time, I didn't have the cash to pay, but friends helped out. And you know, so we do those things, but we're not sure just exactly what to do. And many of us, you know, many of us get angry at our alcoholic and our addict. So if it's a son or a daughter or wife or husband or mother or father, we get angry at them and say, Jesus, why can't they stop? You know, don't they care about themselves, or don't they care about us? And so those thoughts all come from a total misunderstanding of the disease. We don't understand the disease, and you know, it's like, um, for many of us, we can't even comprehend that the addict or the alcoholic cannot stop on their own. That they're like Russell Brand says. Russell Brand wrote a book that kind of his rendition of the 12 steps, and step number one was, you know, basically you're screwed. And he didn't use that word; he used the F word. But and no addict or alcoholic wants to hear that, you know. And let me tell you, I mean, I work with a lot of addicts and alcoholics, and nobody likes that. They're like, "You kidding? Yeah, you're screwed. You really are. There's prognosis is terrible, and you know, unless you surrender entirely to a new way of living, you're totally screwed. You know, you're going to end up institutions, you know, hospitals, institutions, and death. And I, you know, all three of those I'm familiar with in my life. I've been surrounded by it for years, and I buried, you know, hundreds of guys, and, you know, and many of them went through the hospitals and institutions before they finally died. And so that's the reality of the disease. And if you have a family member who's deep in the disease, that's a hard reality. You know, that is a hard reality. That's like, you know, but fighting against that reality isn't, you know, in my opinion, the path. You know, becoming aware of the solution, researching the solution for us. You know, many of us, we our experience has been a spiritual solution. So becoming a student. I became a student, a spiritual student. I did. I had to. I had to find something that, where I felt it, where I became, where it became real for me. Because the whole thing in the say the 12 step program is we're not in the belief business. The 12 steps are not about a belief, although it says came to believe in a power greater than ourselves. But as we go through the steps, it moves from a belief to an experience of. And that's a big deal. And the promises in the ninth step are actually promises of an awakened being. That is possible in those steps. But it's a serious path. It isn't it's a serious path. And Brianna's saying it's bad that the hospitals don't help the addict more. The truth is, it's almost impossible for the hospital to help the addict. You go to any emergency department and say, how you guys doing with the addicts and alcoholics that come through here? And they throw their hands up and say, we don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. I listened the other day to the Minister of Health in British Columbia as she threw her hands up and said, you know what? We don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. British Columbia is a province here in Canada, and it has a very, very high death rate from the opiate crisis, and they don't know what to do. They're like they don't they don't have the ability. We can't legislate this thing. We can't throw money at it. Just throw money at it. I mean, it's a crazy thing that the best therapists just can't go deep enough. And a couple of things happen. The addict and the alcoholic don't generally, depending how far down the scale they've gone, they don't trust the therapist. I mean, the therapist to them is a bit of a joke because the therapist doesn't understand really from personal experience, what's going on. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that therapy, it can be helpful. I think self-knowledge is important. We get to realize, who we are, what our triggers are, what's been going on, why, you know, um, do the trauma work. I've been reading Gabor Mate, and I've been exploring more and asking questions more about trauma. As a recovered addict and alcoholic for many years, I downplayed the trauma in my life, and so continued to have lots of suffering and pain even in recovery. So don't get me wrong, I think that stuff's important. But ultimately, um, what seems to work is that we come to believe in a power greater than ourselves. We become willing to surrender to that power on a daily basis, and it's a daily practice. And this is for the family too. It really is. I mean, if you want peace, what what's the opposite of having peace of mind? Laying awake at night worrying about your son, right? Laying awake at night and worrying about, your ex-husband who, became your ex because he's an addict and alcoholic, but he's still the father of your children, and you're wondering, where is he going to die? And you're concerned about your kids, and I mean, all of this stuff these are all the fears that live in the family of the addict and the alcoholic. So we want peace, and if we want peace, there is a path to peace. Um, One of my Cami, who wrote here today, the above statement is from Al-Anon. Oh, she talked about we didn't cause it. We didn't. What did she say? We didn't cause it. We can't control it, and we can't change it. That's in Al-Anon. She said, I started attending that in January, the week after my partner lost his 28-year-old son to an overdose. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Perry is her husband and partner, and my partner is sitting in so much pain, not talking to people, and saying this is just his pain and pushing me away. I've lost two parents, two partners, and several friends to this disease, so it's hard. I went to two AA meetings yesterday and gave newcomers my phone number. I just reach out. Yes, Cami, that's awesome. I mean, when we're in the recovery process, helping others takes us out of ourself. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, that it's there. We're able to do that. And what often, you know, often the family of the addict and the alcoholic are like, how is it that, I've taken my son to all of these hospitals and therapists, and some truck driver or ex-drug dealer or jailbird at an AA meeting or an NA meeting can help him, and these professionals couldn't. And I'm not saying that the professionals aren't necessary or they aren't good, but the person who's been through the process, the recovery process, has the tools to help other people through it. It's kind of it's just a fact. And so, if you're family of an addict or an alcoholic and you're wondering, what do I do? And your family is, your kid or your son or your daughter, your addict, I'll call them your addict, has said, well, I don't like that 12-step business because they talk about God. Talk to me. This is the area I love to help people with, because often we're very prejudiced. We have a lot of prejudice around this whole idea of a higher power, and I've been really successful in helping people break through that, and let go of our old ideas of higher power, and often religious-based ideas that didn't work. And there is a way. There is a way. Lots of times I've worked with people who've said, look, I want to come, I want recovery, but there's no way I'm ever going to believe in a higher power or God. And I've said, great, and often within a few minutes I can show them where they already do. They just hadn't realized, they didn't have the language for it, and then it becomes easy. The process becomes easy. Recovery becomes easy. It's just the mental blocks sometimes that are there. Pride says, fear, pride, fear, self-pity. We're tied up in it, and so there is a way out. All right, you guys, that's my talk about recovery for the family, and there's I could go on for hours. I could, and there's so much need. There is so much need, and if you or anybody would like to, I really enjoy doing little interviews, and so we can talk about this stuff, and kind of reveal our own pain, so that others can see how they're similar, how they're not alone, and because lots of times family members are suffer so much from being alone. There's so much misunderstanding, and there's even stigma, you know about the disease. There's even, there is a thought, there's people say, I wonder what happened in his childhood to cause him to be an addict or an alcoholic, and that's bullshit, you know but that we hear that, you know and even the addict and the alcoholic comes in and says, must have been something that my mother did. Well, we don't care if your mother put you on the toilet backwards when you were 3 or 4. We're not, that's not where we're going. you know and Anyway, that's it. So I'm gonna read. Every day I read from my little book here. Where the heck is it? And the what time is it? Oh, look at that. I've run on a bit. Put my glasses on here. So this is the little book, the 24-hour day book. I've been reading it for a while, and we're going to look at it again today. What is the date? The 7th. Look, the March the 7th. March the 7th. So this little book was written in 1954, you guys, and it was for the early days of the 12-step program, and it talked a lot about spiritual recovery. It's a very God-centered book, and part of why I read this every day is that I want to encourage, people in my life to have daily practices. Like, daily practices are so important. We break our lives up into daily packages. Anybody can manage today in a way, can get through this day in a way. And so we break it up into daily practices, or daily packages, and one day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, sometimes it's 1 minute at a time, but everything brings us into this moment. It's an amazing path, this smaller packages path. So this is a writing that was put together for daily reading. So March the 7th, thought for the day. There are two important things we have to do if we want to stay sober, to get sober and stay sober. First, having admitted that we were helpless before alcohol, we had to turn our alcoholic problem over to God and trust Him to take care of it for us. Now, not many addicts and alcoholics get to this unless um, they've really, tried to quit. Nobody says I need help quitting until they've discovered that they were unable to. And that was, my situation. I had tried. I was a good quitter. I really was. I was the number one quitter. I just couldn't stay quit. And I would wake up in the morning so guilt ridden and full of shame and say, I'm done. I am done. I've got to quit this. And I would say, I'm okay. I'm going to quit. But I couldn't stay. And that's the deal. So if you're an addict and alcoholic, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've said that's it. And then a couple of days later, you say, well, if I could just manage it. And then a couple of days later, if it goes that long, it may be the very same day. Maybe a couple of hours later, you say, well, hell with it. I'm going to drink. Um, this means asking our higher power, universal intelligence, Him, every morning for the strength to stay sober that day and thanking Him every night. So, yes, keep me sober today. Thank you for keeping me sober today. It means really leaving the problems in God's hands and not reaching out and getting the problem back to ourselves. Second, having giving our drink problem to God, we must cooperate with Him by doing something about it ourselves. Am I doing these two things? Then they have the meditation for the day. I must prepare myself by doing each day what I can to develop spiritually and to help others to do so. I must prepare myself by doing each day what I can to develop spiritually and to help others to do so. I think that his direction towards develop spiritually is, what I was just talking about, to become a spiritual student. We want to develop spiritually, make it an interest, make it a passion, maybe make it an obsession to learn more about ourselves in a spiritual nature. Um, and help others to do so. God tests me and trains me and bends me to His will. If I'm not properly trained, I cannot meet the test when it comes. I must want God's will for me above all else. I must not expect to have what I am not prepared for. This preparation consists of quiet communion with God every day and gradually gaining the strength I need. Beautiful, so well written. So we become one with that through quiet communion. And we're on a path that, the path we were on wasn't working. And, for the alcoholic and the addict, we know how much pain we are causing our family. Like, we do know that, and that's so hard. You know, I know so many addicts and alcoholics who have died and left their children. And man, they didn't want that. They didn't want that. They wanted to be a good dad or a good mom, and they're gone, you know, and that's tough. So um, there are a lot of great reasons to get sober, and but where people get kind of, I mean, I think lots of people want to, and they just can't get past some of the things that are required, and I'm here to help you get past those things. Prayer for the day. I pray that I may really try to do God's will in all my affairs. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. A million times. Thy will be done. I pray that I may do all I can to help others find God's will for them. And that is my prayer. By the way, I believe so much in the power of prayer. I think my mother's prayer saved all of us in my family. I have 4 siblings, and we've all had a measure of recovery in the 12-step world and in the Christian faith as well. A couple of my brothers went that route, and that's whatever works. And I think my mother's prayers, and I think the most honest prayer that we can have for another is that they, whoever they are, come to know God's will for them in their life. The most honest prayer is, help, Ruth Ann to come to know God's will in her life. And that's it. I can't pray for my will in their life, help my son or my daughter, help my ex-wife, help, you know, whoever it happens to be, to come to know God's will in their life, period. And what a freeing prayer that is. Beautiful. So usually what I do at this time is just a very short meditation. So let's not even call it a meditation, okay? Thanks, Cami. Yeah, God's will. Um, and it's a very short prayer. The prayer of, just pray that Perry comes to know God's will in his life. And boom, you know, I think that we can intervene with prayer. We can advocate for people with prayer. What do we know about the spiritual realms, really? You know, and if you're a family of an addict or an alcoholic, what else is working? Right? What else is working? So try it. I think there's nothing more powerful than the prayers of a wife or a mother. Honestly, nothing more powerful. Okay. So we're not going to meditate. We're just going to sit. We call it sitting. Because people get like, oh, I can't meditate. Oh, I can't make my mind stop. Join the club, right? Here we are. So we sit, and we sit quietly, and let's just call it that. So if you'd like to join me for a few minutes of sitting, I'd love you to, literally. I won't keep you. Maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then we'll. That's it. Literally 3 or 4 minutes, and if you want to, when I'm done, you can stay in the whatever we've gotten into. You can stay there. Okay. So just close your eyes. Yeah, just close your eyes. So drop in. One of the reasons I suggest that we close our eyes, and some teachings are, say it's okay to leave your eyes open, but I think we've spent so much of our life looking outward, for the answers. And now we're going to practice looking inward for ourselves, for our divinity, for our oneness inside, for our stillness, for that, for isness, for universal intelligence, for consciousness inside. So remember that the breath, when we focus, bring our awareness to our consciousness to our breath, breath brings us into the moment. So just drop into your breath. Just drop into your body. Maybe just bring your attention to your whole body, your feet and your legs, your hips, your back. Just be in your body. Bring your breath in and allow the life-giving oxygen to travel everywhere in your body, to your arms and to every ache and pain as well. Just bring your attention there with love and light. So much freedom to be had inside. And if thoughts come up, just gently, oh so gently let them go. Never go against them, just let them go. Even tell them, I'll come back to you later. Just gently let them go. Just experience the stillness, the quiet. Bill Wilson said that deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. That's where we're going, to this consciousness of a higher power deep inside of us. There we go. Just feel tension leaving our shoulders. As we settle in. you, thank you, thank you. Okay, just stay in this place. No need to come out. I'm going to leave. Love you. Love it if you subscribe to us on YouTube. Thank you. And if sometime in the future you'd like to talk about your experience, I'm open to that. Thank you. Love you.